Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Fawal again. In this video we are going to talk about the data and the information and life cycle of data and life cycle of information. In day-to-day life we are dealing with a lot of data, a lot of information, but we are not sure how that data and their life cycle works. So let's start. So we are going to discuss important topic which is data life cycle. When you talk about the data is nothing but any sort of details, any sort of information related to the individuals, related to any sort of assets, related to any sort of things. When I said asset is nothing but anything which gives you, the benefit out of it. So for example, your computer is an asset. If you are working on some company, that company's premises is your asset. Then if you are in the networking world, the routers, switches and all those equipments, appliances, those are assets. And from those assets we'll be getting benefit in terms of having that assets working functionality for us, and that is giving you some sort of cost benefit and financial benefits in terms of dealing with the customers and their services. Plus it gives you some sort of other benefits and the features depending on the what assets you're talking about. In data and the information life cycle, we're going to discuss how this data carry in the world. And basically when I talk about the information is nothing but the any details about that data, the details we derived from that particular data. So let's start. First thing, I just want to give you a overview how data life cycle looks and data flow across the world. So when you talk about the data always at certain states. Number one state is data is at rest. Number two state is data at motion. Number three state is data in use. So these are the three states of data generally the data is in. So when I say data at rest, this stage, it means the data whatever we have, it's in a resting state. What that means, that data is always stored somewhere and we are not using that data. If you have say CD, say floppy, say pen drive, or you have the hard disk, whatever the storage device you have, if you keeping data inside those storage device and we are not using that data, we call it that data is in rest, right? When we deal with the data always need to be get protected no matter at which state it is. So whenever data is at a rest state, it's like a vulnerable data. Why it's vulnerable data? Because we don't know if some malicious user, hacker, or some non-authorized user will get access to this data, by means of stealing this CD, floppy drive, pen drive, hard disk. For example, you are working on say some healthcare industry and you are an architect in that. You have important data with you. For example, there is something called PHI. This data you have with your hard disk, pen drive, or floppy disk, whatever it is. You have say all the patient's details admit in your hospital and they are with your hospital, you having all those details with you, like their name, their say SSN details, uh, their address, what disease they are facing, blah blah blah, like what all, like all those details you'll be having with you. And it's not for the only one uh, individuals, it's for entire patient you have in your hospital. So all this data you have stored in somewhere, and uh, one day you are carrying out that data. For example, you have those data in your hard disk, and your hard disk you carrying out from one place to another place. You are driving on your car. However, something happened, some robbery happened with your car, and your this hard disk got stolen, where all this personal data, the patient's data was stored. So that data is now with the some other person's hand, and he can use that data for its whatever malicious activities. So important thing is that even if the data is at rest, you need to protect that data. And how you can protect that data? You have to use industrial standards, like you have to do the disk encryption, or you have to use some sort of encryption techniques, so that whatever data we are talking about is always in some other format, and it's got protected. Even if the some malicious user he got that access of those data, he should not use that for the some wrong purpose, right? So that is the data rest state, and how you can deal with that. Then second state is data at motion. So consider you are working with an organization, and your organization is dealing with some product or some sort of services, and whatever the communication is happening from your organization to the other vendors or your customers, you have to exchange the information, you have to exchange the data. That data which is flowing across the your organization to the other side is, we call it, data at motion. So keeping this data privacy integrity is very important. You also need to have protect this data using different sort of algorithms. Like in a security world, whenever we talk about data in a motion, we can protect it with using the TLS protocols, and specifically version 1.2 and above. So you need to apply this TLS transport layer security to your data, and usually it's deal with using these certificates. So it is important, whenever data at motion, that data also need to be get protected via some sort of encryption methods. So one way you can do that is with the TLS. Another way you can use IPsec suite. It's a IPsec protocol suite which you can use to encrypt this data if that data is in motion. Again, consider the attacks like a man in the middle attack. Let me clear up the screen. So consider this is your one system, there is another system where this data need to be sent right from one system to another system. However, some malicious user, say hacker, or some malicious user is capturing or watching your data, and somehow he did some sort of techniques. So your data which was earlier transiting from your one PC to the another, it's not transiting like this, right? So this is called man in middle attack, and this man in the middle is intercepting your data. And what if he has this data, what can he do? It's up to him. So such sort of attacks usually happen when we talk about data is in motion or data in a motion. So we are talking about the data life cycle here, and the part we have covered, data in motion. So one, we discuss data at rest, okay, and its protection technique. Then we have already discussed data at motion and the protection technique. Now we will discuss data in use. So data in use is something, consider you have open any sort of application, and from that application you need to do some sort of uploading, downloading the data. Okay, so consider you are uploading some data from your hard disk. So initially that data was in a hard disk, right? Now you are uploading to some computer. So that uploading stage where the data is in flow, we are here discussing about the data in use. So now that data which was in a rest state is now we are using it, and that state we call it data in use. Consider, if you know these terms, the volatile memory cache. So whenever data is in use, usually that data from any storage device will keep into this volatile memory, right? And then it goes, or it is in a cache memory. From that it use for whatever the application you are using. So again, this data which is in a volatile memory or in a cache, that is also need to be get protected. There are various algorithms which we can have to have this to be protected, but there is an issue with this. Consider whenever we do any sort of encryption, the data format is get changed, it is going to some unreadable format. But whenever the system or any device wanted to use that data need to be get decrypted, right? So that the system can be use it well, and there should be no in use. Or consider in another sense, if you wanted to use that data, you need to have the data in a original format, right? If it is in encrypted format, you can't see it well and you won't be able to use it. But when it is in a decrypted format, in the original format, you can use it well. So that data need to be get decrypted, and that decryption need to be handled on a data which is in a use. So that is one issue, that once the data is decrypted, the malicious user can see that. But however, in the latest computing, we have the protection with this also, and whatever the data which is in use is get protected. So I hope you understand the basic terminology in behind what is data at rest, data at motion, and data in use, right? Now, having all this thing in a place, we need to also consider certain things to be more proactive to deliver certain sort of security on the data life cycle. So number one thing, if you want to become a proactive, you need to have the tracking system. What do you mean by tracking? It's like a auditing or a audit log. So whatever the data we are talking about is in use, is in motion, is in a rest, we need to track that. We need to have those logs audited. If for example your system is using some sort of data and something wrong thing is happening on that data, some malicious user is dealing with something on that, that auditing and that auditing logs will help you to understand how it is, like what is going to happen with it. With the tracking, you come with the terminology like monitoring. What do you mean by monitoring? You need to have some SIM tools or some tools which you can have this audit logs in place and correlate well, so that whatever the audit log is coming out of the system in a system format will be get relate or come into the proper format, and you see in a monitoring system. And the monitoring system like say SIM tools or some sort of say monitoring tools like SolarWinds. They give you real-time analysis on the data, how it works, so the monitoring is important. Again, once you have all these things also place, you need to consider the access controls. So whatever the data you are talking about, you have to have a proper control on it. You need to manage it with the respect to the what permission level you need to have for a certain users for that accessing for that data. So that access control layer you need to be placed, like a well policies, everything like the firewalling and everything with respect to this. About the access control, what proper countermeasures you need to have, uh, to protect that data, right? You need to have firewalls, you need to have some sort of routers, some sort of proxy devices, some sort of load balancers, how those data can be carried out and get protected from the various networking attacks, right? So the countermeasure is also important. Then some important details and terms like doing the backing up your data. So in a day-to-day life we generally hear a lot of news with respect to the ransomwares. So if the ransomware attack has happened, the data is already got encrypted by the from the hacker. They do some algorithm applies, and they just lock your data with some encryptions, and your data is gone, right? But having backups with the data, you can recover whatever the data is got encrypted using those backups. So backup is also one of the critical things you need to have. Now when we talk about the countermeasures, we also talk about the the mechanism how we can deal with that. So there is something called DLP, data loss prevention system. So use this data loss prevention system in your organization. So whatever the data you are passing to your organization or from an organization is get verified from the DLP, and accordingly those policies get applied. So DLP is one of the critical things, and the controls, the countermeasures are the one of the critical things here you need to have. So guys, I hope you are able to understand what is data life cycle. Thanks for watching this video guys, and have a wonderful day.